Hello everyone, it's Silvia from Fairlight Tarot. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do a VR to the lovely Coco from Tarot Geek. It's Dark Academia Tarot. So I'm very excited about this tag because I do love reading Dark Academia books. I'm actually reading Bybee at the moment, and I know that there's a lot of people DNFing it, but I actually really love it because it's all about language and the origin of language, and that is just right down my alley. So let's start. There's some really cool prompts, and I hope that there'll be other people joining on this tag because I really love watching all of the VRs and the choices. So the first one is the Library's Secret, a deck that you find yourself drawn to for its hidden depths and mysteries. I had to go with this deck. So this is the Magician, Martyrs and Madman Tarot by Travis McHenry. In specific, this is the mass market edition published by Rockbull. Probably about a year ago. I know that there's also an indie edition in circulation still. Some people are selling it on Facebook groups, for example, and I'm not entirely sure what the differences are between the two editions, but this is an amazing deck. This is something that really draws myself to because of all of these hidden depths and mysteries, and I love reading about all of these characters in the guidebook, which is actually really well thought of. I think that there's so much to this deck that meets much more than meets the eyes. I think that it's one of those decks that you need to use, or at least you need to study for quite some time. Not necessarily to be able to read with it, because you can just decide to stick to the way in which you will normally read an RWS deck. You can definitely read it out of the box if you want to, but what a waste. I mean, there is so much that goes on into these cards because each and every card is referring to indeed one of the magicians, famous magicians or famous martyrs or madmen in history. And I don't know about you, but obviously I don't know all of these ones. I believe there's 79 cards, because there might be, yes, there is. So there's an alternate card to the Lovers card. So there's 79 cards. And I think that when you have 79 cards, you have to just know that some of these characters will be completely obscure to you. And so that's what draws me in, because I'm really so interested in finding out what the stories are in this card. There's actually, I think, 80 cards because there's 3 Lovers cards, so you can actually choose depending on gender. So it is really cool. And as I said, it's one of those decks. I could stay with this deck for hours just trying to, gather more information about the characters on the cards and then making associations with what I know or how I would read that specific card. Really love this deck. I think it's really cool. And the next prompt is Inkwell and Quill, a deck that inspires you creatively like the pages of an old leather-bound journal. Honestly, there's so many decks that could have been my picks for this prompt, but I did have to go with the Deviant Moon, and in specific the Paradoxical edition. So this one is, let's say, the sister deck to the more famous Deviant Moon Tarot by Patrick Valenza, the standard edition, let's call it this way, or even the borderless edition are printed by US Games, released by US Games, so they are mass market decks. However, this one, which is the Paradoxical edition, is still an indie edition, and I don't know whether it will ever be picked up mass market. I think that it's not necessarily a new deck, and so I'm kind of thinking if they wanted to pick it up mass market, they would have by now. And I had to explain. So this prompt is all about creation and creative inspiration. And I feel that all of my decks, to different extent, obviously, they do inspire me creatively, because I do think that working with tarot, especially when you look at the practice that, you know, touches a little bit on journaling, on meditating, and sometimes on creating your own spread, that is definitely something that by my books corresponds to a creative activity. So all of the decks in my collection, for one reason or another, would definitely inspire my creativity. So I know that I had to be a bit more specific. And by looking at this deck, I remember reading, and I still read it, the Coffee Table book, which is not entirely, let's say it's a coffee table book. It's not necessarily a guidebook to this deck, and it's a coffee table size. It is a book that through images shows what Patrick went through when creating this deck, or rather the standard edition of this Deviant Moon. And so you definitely feel the creative process being developed. You definitely feel like the creative juices were really serving Patrick when he did this fantastic, amazing job in creating this deck. And because of that, I feel like there is something that perpetuates that kind of creativity. When you observe an artist create something, it kind of puts you in the mood to be creative as well. Perhaps it's just me, but that's the effect that it's got on me. And so I had to go for the Deviant Moon, but then when I looked at the two decks, because the Deviant Moon Standard Edition, I have the borderless one, it's kind of dark for me. It's definitely one of those decks that I use for shadow work. I had to go for the Paradoxical Edition, which is ironically really balanced and grounded for me. So instead of going for one edition that would just necessarily inspire a certain type of work, I prefer this one, which is definitely balanced. And I find myself that when looking at these cards, perhaps because of the difference in colors, let's say, it almost looks like it's a negative, like the print of a negative of a photo. It does feel like there is this sense of balance, but it's also because it's distracting you from the, let's say, the darkest side of the tarot cards. So the Deviant Moon, the borderless edition, the standard edition is pretty much very clear. The message hits you straight away. As soon as you look at the card, there is no way that you actually lose your gaze from one area to the other. Whereas that does tend to happen in this deck. For example, this is the Six of Swords, which is a fantastic card. I absolutely love it. If you look at the standard edition, this card is threatening, is menacing, and it tends to give you an idea of perhaps exaggerating the problem you're facing, the choppy waters that surround you, even though this is obviously a hot air balloon, but let's say so the wind that is howling around you. Whereas when I look at this card in specific from this edition, I tend to revert back to that sense, the more balanced sense of the Six of Swords in general. So I do believe that this one is a fantastic deck. It's got different vibes than the standard edition, and I highly recommend it. I think that it's out of print on Patrick's website, but you can still find some resellers. I bought this one from LT Tarot, and they have a website, and they do ship overseas, but you do have to contact them by sending them an email with your address and everything, and then they organize the shipment. I don't know how many they have left in stock, to be honest with you, but this is a fantastic deck, and I highly recommend it. If you like Patrick Valenza's artwork, this is definitely inspiring. So the next prompt is a very interesting one, because obviously we're kind of in the northern hemisphere. You guys are kind of entering those autumn vibes, which we're actually moving away from in the southern hemisphere, because we're going more likely towards spring. I have to say though, for me, the month of September, but to a much higher extent to the month of October, definitely still retain that feeling of autumn because of Halloween. So the third prompt is Eternal Autumn, a deck that captures the melancholy and beauty of fall, embodying the bittersweet nature of change. I know it's a very counterintuitive pick, but I had to go with the Tilwick Tarot. This is the second edition. I really love this deck. It's probably one of my most cherished decks. It is the second edition, not the first edition, and I know that the first edition has much more clarity in the cards, specifically when it comes to the contrast in the colors, and so it is kind of easier to use. I, however, have learned how to love this edition. I really enjoy it. I find this deck to be my eternal autumn deck because all of the cards, regardless of the color of the borders, do remind me of autumn and the fall vibes. And I really enjoy using it. I have to be careful because this is my only copy. I did not reach out for the 10th year anniversary copy, so this is the only one I've got. And I really don't want to have to reach or buy the first edition because nowadays it sells for like $600-700 US, which is way out of my league. And you know, last but not least, I never want to ruin a deck. I know that sometimes we are okay with wearing a deck out because it means that we really love it and we're using it, etc. But when it's an indie deck, especially an out of print deck, you may want to be careful about how much you use it and how specifically how you use it, because you know, perhaps a bridge and refill shuffle is not exactly the way you want to handle a deck that costs a lot of money if you have to buy a different copy. But getting back to this deck, so this is absolutely beautiful. This represents indeed the beauty of fall, and it does embody this bittersweet nature of change for me. Admittedly, it was a not easy deck to read at the beginning. Now it's been a few years, so I have learned how to relate to the cards, and I have to say that a major help was that study that I found from a Facebook member, and she sent me this study that had been completed by someone she didn't know, so we couldn't actually reach out to this person to ask whether it was okay to divulge this study that she made. And then, you know, I got asked for the link to the PDF file to this guidebook, sort of a guidebook for this deck. And I finally could reach the person that sent it to me, and she said that she finally did speak to the person who wrote the guidebook, and she was more than happy for everyone to have a copy, so I'm not doing anything wrong in sending it out. I already sent it out to a bunch of you who requested. If you're still interested in having the PDF written, it's a very academic feeling kind of guidebook. And so it is very intuitive, but at the same time you can actually get on board with the interpretation of the person who wrote it. So just reach out to me by email and I will send you a copy. But this is an incredible deck that I highly recommend. If you can still find the 10th year anniversary edition, it's actually very affordable. If that one is already out of print, then perhaps, you know, someone will be willing to part ways with a copy, but it's a really beautiful deck. And the next prompt is fantastic because it's called the Philosopher Stone, a deck that helps you transform your thoughts like alchemy for the soul. And I am starting, at the end of the month, I'm starting the deck study with my members. And we're looking at the tarot, the Awakening Tarot by Monica Bodirsky, because of the elemental approach this deck has to the traditional RWS. This is a fantastic deck. I've only just got it recently, even though I did some research on this deck before we decided what deck to choose. On every 3 months, 2.5 months, I run a poll within my members to choose a deck that we're going to study together. And this one won by a few votes, actually. It was almost a tie with the Good Tarot, but Lisa Papez is doing the study on the Good Tarot. So I just decided that it was best not to overlap that because I'm a member of Lisa's channel as well. So with my members, we're looking at this deck and we're so excited because you guessed it is a alchemical tarot. So it's obviously extremely interesting if you're into alchemy and you want to participate to this deck study. I highly recommend. I know I'm tooting my own horn, but I highly recommend my membership because we're doing a really fantastic work on diving deep down the rabbit hole into the decks that we're studying. I always post 2 or 3 videos beforehand in which I give my own interpretation of some of the cards, and then I give you heaps of prompts in order for you to be able to do your own deep dive on the decks. And then we have a live in which we actually discuss all of the other resources that we had a look through. So for example, in this case, I'm recommending heaps of decks, but also books on alchemy. But also, for example, I don't know if you were aware, but there are a lot of movies that use a panel of alchemists on set in order to find the right way, the right balance between the alchemical energies on set, and I find that absolutely fascinating. So this deck is fantastic. I've talked about this deck presenting and doing an unboxing the other day, so you would have seen it on my channel already. I didn't go through the book too much because that's what we're going to do with my members, but this is a chunky one, and together with all of the other books that I'm recommending, it's going to be a truly dark academia kind of season for us. So this is, as I said, it is an alchemical deck, obviously dividing minors into the alchemical elements of earth, fire, water and air, or the other way around. In any case, it is alchemical. So we got earth, air, and probably fire afterwards. Yep, fire and then water. It is really beautiful. So if you're familiar with the name Monica Bodirsky, it means that you probably have the Shadowlands Tarot, which is absolutely fantastic. It's very whimsical. It will be, you will see it in my channel for the next few weeks because it's one of those decks that really gave me the idea of Halloween, but the whimsical side of Halloween, not the dark side of Halloween. It is kind of a creepy deck, but I love it for that. This one, I have to say, is not a creepy deck, but it does have the same kind of vibe sometimes, some cards at least, as the Shadowlands Tarot, in the sense that it does present these kind of really odd looking characters. They are half human, or at least they have some semblance of a human. This one has a head and a face, but then it's got a beehive on top. And you know, it's after the bust looks like it's actually between 2 wheels, so it looks like the chariot, and it's obviously the card of the chariot. So this deck has the majors at the end of the deck. I love this Hermit card, which is renamed Contemplation. Most of the majors have been renamed, and also all of the court cards have been renamed. It is not a difficult renaming. It's actually really beautiful because it points to the major aspects of the court cards. So Contemplation is the Hermit card, and I love the fact that the lantern is actually replacing the head of this person. And this is probably my favorite card, is the Wheel of Fortune, in which we see the same concept as the weaving of the time that we find in some decks where we find the 3 weavers. In this deck, it actually takes it a step further because it shows you the Wheel of Fortune as destiny, as a renaming, you can see here, but it's also showing you someone weaving a web or a spider web, and it's definitely a spider, as you can see from you know, the multiple legs on the back. So it is a bit creepy, but at the same time I really love it. There's the alchemy in the integrity card, so justice looks at the balance between the fire element and the water element. or the perspective for the hanged one, the release, of course, for the death card, and so on and so forth. And it's just an amazing deck. And it's one of those decks that it almost looks like it's made on purpose to be studied or the subject of a deck study, because there's so many prompts to be discussed while looking at this deck. Really an amazing deck. Okay, so the next prompt is Canol and Shadow, a deck that feels perfect for those late night readings illuminated by a single candle. I had to go with the Habitual Charm Tarot because this is becoming pretty quickly one of my favorite decks to use at night. So Traum in German means dream. It doesn't mean trauma, it means dream. And this is one of those decks that indeed has a very dreamy-like quality to it, and I really like using this deck at night. Indeed, well, perhaps more than a single candlelight, because my eyesight is not the best. So obviously I need more light in order to be able to see the images, but in any case it is reminiscent of that kind of atmosphere of a candlelit light. So there is a second deck from the same creator, which is called the Tamara Tarot, which I just received, and I did an unboxing again for the video I posted a couple of days ago. It is an incredibly beautiful deck, but I have to say my first love is the one that you don't forget, and it is this one. This is probably my favorite between the two. I feel that the images have more of a probably a charge that I cannot yet feel for the Tamara Tarot, even though I really absolutely love the artwork in the Tamara Tarot, because it is, let's say, inspired by Tamara Lempicka artwork and other artists. There is the use of AI. You guys know this because I actually talk about it a few times when presenting these decks. However, if you follow the creator's Instagram account, you will see the whole process of creating the cards, and you will see that, as she explains, for each and every one of these cards and the Tamara Tarot as well, it took her more than 100 clicks of working in the digital image outside of the production of the AI engine. So obviously I don't want to get into merit of discussing this or not, because I feel that there's been way too much said, and we still don't have decent regulations when it comes to use of AI. So I will, you know, if you guys want, we can talk about it, but I still want to wait for legislations and, you know, and rules, because obviously we're talking about something that is really being used, not just when it comes to artistic productions, but even when it comes to writing essays and books and stuff like that. So I don't understand why governments are really dragging their feet in coming out with clear legislation for the use of AI, especially in a commercial environment, but also in an academic environment, because honestly, I think it's about time, and probably it was about time 2 years ago. So I'm waiting to see what they're doing. But obviously legislations are always very slow, but this deck is really beautiful, and it does give me that idea of late night readings, etc. So this is definitely my prompt for the Canol and Shadow, and it's the Habitual Charm Tarot. And the next prompt made me really happy because it's called Ghost of the Past, a deck that connects you with history or your ancestors, steeped in nostalgia. And obviously, being from Venice, I had to go with the Venetian Tarot, which I absolutely love. It is by Eugene Vinitsky, which is based in Switzerland, so is not, the creator is not from Venice. It would have been really cool if a creator of the Venetian Tarot would have been from Venice, but I have to say, as a Venetian person, I kind of accept and actually admire the work that has been done and the research that has been done in these cards. I'm not a fan of the cardstock. As a matter of fact, this is a collectible item for me, so I do not use it. But as you can see, because I probably show it a lot on my channel, there's a number of cards that are actually ruined already see, or at least the gilding, the gold gilding is slightly chipped, which makes me really sad, because I would love to have this deck preserved forever. Maybe I should have bought 2 copies. I don't even know whether this is still available or not. Every time that I show this deck, I talk about this card. This is the Justice card, and it's showing the Bridge of Sighs, because the Bridge of Sighs was taking prisoners from the last building of their freedom into the jail, into the prison. And so obviously they were given the possibility to look out of these 2 windows here on the bridge and look at the beauty that it is, the Venetian Lagoon. And it's called the Bridge of Sighs because obviously they were sighing with nostalgia and sadness, because they knew that it was the last time they would have seen such a wonderful, wonderful landscape. And so then after they were escorted into the prison. So I really love that they used this for the Justice card. We do have Venice in all of its splendor with the gondolas, of course, and Palazzo Grassi, and obviously the clock tower and the bell tower, and you know, San Marco, and all that you can expect in a tarot deck that is based. This is from the clock tower, that every time I go to Venice I have to climb it, because the views from the clock tower and also from the bell tower are absolutely superb. And yes, this is the fog that you see in Venice pretty much when the sun sets, you know, no matter what time of the year you go there, probably not in summer. And yes, this is actually something that does happen every now and then. Venice has a lot of baccari. So a baccarat is a bar, really tiny actually, and you can't sit. Generally speaking, a true baccarat doesn't have seating space, but you can stand up. You can order a ombra di vino, so translated it goes like a shadow of wine, and it's just a really small glass of wine, not the full-size glass of wine. So you can have more than one, or at least, you know, tell yourself that you can have more than one without getting drunk. And then you can choose what to eat. There's a lot of tapas style food on offer. So there's a lot of people drinking and falling into the canal, you know, after drinking. And obviously, yeah, absolutely, the gondoliere right there. These are the masks that you will see pretty much everywhere in Venice during the Carnevale. This is the Leone di San Marco's lion, which is on top of a column, and it used like a beacon of hope to the sailors that were passing by. So this is obviously really, really amazing. This is Piazza San Marco, and the way it looks when it rains, it looks like there's a mirror to the church, San Marco's church. And I could just describe each and every one of these cards, because obviously this is the way in which I relate to my ancestors. I relate to where my roots were. Obviously I don't live there anymore, and let me tell you, not a lot of people actually live in Venice, because it is one of the most expensive cities in Italy to own property in, as you can imagine. But it is one of those places that preserve that kind of feeling, even if you live nearby. And there's, for example, there are trains, all of the trains taking you to Venice. And in the Venetian region, it never takes long to get there. So it is actually very easy to visit. As a matter of fact, it's probably too easy to visit, because in summertime and during the Carnevale we have millions of visitors. There's been a lot of complaints about that. But that's another story, and yeah, I completely understand that. So in any case, this is Arlecchino, by the way. This is one of the masks of Carnevale, very, very famous one. The reason why there's these different colors, pieces of fabric, is because Arlecchino is so poor that he cannot own actual clothes. So these are actually rags stitched together from different clothes that he finds on the way, and that's why they are in different colors, which I find that it's very symbolic, and I absolutely love that. So this is the Venetian Tarot. And the next prompt is also extremely interesting, because it's called a scholarly pursuit, a deck that you turn to for learning, study, or deepen understanding of Tarot. Now this is a counterintuitive pick because this is definitely a deck that I turn to for learning and study, but not necessarily for understanding more tarot. And it's the Gnostic Tarot. And the reason why I picked this deck is because this deck is let's say very emblematic, very representative of what I generally do. I love when getting into a tarot deck, I absolutely love it when a tarot is giving me the possibility to look at the cards and the meaning of the cards in a different, slightly different way, whether it's because of the symbols that have been used or whether it's because it is presenting a completely different system, which is the case with the Gnostic Tarot. Now, if you're not familiar with the term, so the Gnostics believe that salvation can be achieved through knowledge but not through faith. That is very oversimplifying the whole concept of Gnosticism. There is a lot more to that, but I do think that that is one of the reasons why I actually really am fascinated and intrigued by the Gnostic Tarot, because I really want to see how the creators have produced a deck that is based on the Gnostic movement. So achieving salvation through knowledge and not through faith. This is extremely fascinating for me. I don't necessarily say that I agree with that. That is beside the point. What I mean is that I'm always fascinated by different cultures, different doctrines, and I just want to understand what the impulse on that is. Why do we think that this can be done in a certain way? What type of knowledge? Is it scientific knowledge? Is it historical knowledge? Obviously it is scientific, but it is extremely interesting for me. Now I have to say that the art style on this deck, it is kind of difficult to focus on. I find some of the cards have too much confusion, too many elements. They are a little bit confusing. I do, however, really enjoy this deck, especially when I use it in combination with the guidebook, which is really chunky and extremely informative, really, really interesting. So this is not necessarily one of those decks that I would use for a divination reading, not even probably for meditation or personal growth practice, but it is a deck that I love, absolutely love to study. So the next prompt I'm actually skipping. I'm not gonna do all 12 prompts, also for length reasons. Obviously I don't want this video to be too long because I do tend to talk a lot about every deck that I present. So I'm sticking to 10 prompts out of 12s, but in any case I will link in the description box below the link to the original video, so if you want to join in on the tag, you obviously can have a look at the original one and see all of the prompts. So I'm moving to the next prompt, which is Withering Heights, a deck that stirs intense emotions like a gothic romance novel. Now this one may look like also a bit of a counterintuitive pick, but I had to go with the Madame Lydia Wilhelmina's Tarot Monsters, The Macabre and Autumn Scenes by Bethelyn Bajema. This is one of my top favorite decks for those kind of vibes, those autumn vibes. I really, really love this deck. Now the situation with this deck is, I think that it is out of print for now, but what happens is that the creator Bethelyn, unfortunately she has had in the past, I'm not sure how she feels right now, but I know that she's had health related problems, and so obviously she cannot attend to her shop, but every now and then she actually releases new copies of the Madame Lydia Tarot, as I call it, and a lot of people call it like that. So keep an eye out on her website, because every now and then she does a sell. She sells her decks anew, so you can actually get a hold of a copy. So this one, I know that thinking about Withering Heights, this is not necessarily a deck that will stir intense emotion like a gothic romance novel. However, it is one of the most gothic decks that I've got. Definitely one of the most gothic deck that I've got. And it's one of the decks that mixes a bit, because of a collage style, it mixes elements that really, like when you look at the cards, you kind of have to stop and do a double take and look again, because there's always something creeping in the background, like these dolls, for example. It is curated art, and obviously there's collage as well, so there is this sense of reaching the card and the meaning of the card on a deeper level. Like in this case, for example, there is I don't know if I can show you, but there is this sense of the skin of this person being ruined, and there's I believe flies that are the really big ones. So there's a lot to say about this deck. I absolutely love it. I love everything about it. The cardstock quality is absolutely fantastic. The guidebook is amazing. I really love using it. It's one of those decks that really puts you in the right state of mind when you use it for those really dark vibe. But at that, to me, it also speaks about gothic vibes. And I'm thinking about a few gothic novels. I was reading Vampires of El Norte, for example, or The Hacienda, or Mexican Gothic, you know, all of those sort of gothic novels slash horror novels that are rather famous right now. And so this is actually giving me those kind of vibes, even though practically all of those ones are set in the southern states of the United States or even in Mexico. But at the same time, they do give you this kind of vibe. And I love that I actually ended up talking about this for the full card, because obviously you can see here the pumpkin head, which is a traditional symbol for Halloween. And so this is definitely one of the decks that I absolutely love using when we're talking about Halloween. Really love this deck. And the next prompt is the Ivy Covered Tower, a deck that feels like an old, wise mentor guiding you through life's challenges. I don't know, but I didn't even have to think about this prompt, and I immediately thought about the Lonely Dreamer Tarot by M. Witherspoon. This is the second edition. I really come to love this deck. I have to say I kind of struggle at the beginning, simply because, probably like the Tildwick, I kind of felt like I needed a bit more clarity from the images, and this particular art style can be, for me, it can be a little bit confusing. Sorry, I know that there's a few this deck comes with a few oracle cards, as well as the full 78 tarot cards. So I think that sometimes I put them aside, sometimes I don't, but it doesn't matter. So this is an amazing deck. It's really beautiful. It's Odilon. It's based on the artwork by Odilon Redon. I am so very excited about Lenoir by Odilon Renon, which is an oracle deck that I backed a Kickstarter campaign of, and it's supposed to make its way here to me in a couple of months. So I really look forward to be able to pair it up with this deck. And as I was saying at the beginning, I was kind of struggling a bit because it didn't necessarily feel, or it didn't necessarily give me the clarity that I need sometimes in order to be able to connect with the cards. However, it is one of those decks that gives you the possibility to really dig deeper into your feelings. It is one of those decks that can become a soul deck, and if you're familiar with the term the soul deck, it means one of those decks that is supportive at the same time as very clear. It might be a straight shooter, it might be something like another soul deck. For me, the soul deck by number one is the Savvy Soul Tarot, obviously. And I tend to think of this deck in the same way, even though it is a completely different art style, as you can see. So the Savvy Soul Tarot is a modern photographic collage deck. So this is completely different, of course. However, the way in which this deck and the Savvy Soul act, for my soul, for myself, for my sanity as well, sometimes it is very similar. They do, let's say, put me in the same set of mind, and I am very grateful because of that. And as I said, I'm really looking forward to pair it up with the Oracle, because I think that is going to go really well. But this is definitely my choice for the Ivy Covered Tower, because it is a wise mentor for me. It is guiding me through life's challenges. So we got the last prompt because, as I said, I have skipped 2 prompts. But before I talk about that prompt, I just wanted to say something that I already announced probably a couple of months, not a couple of months, but maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. I usually put in the description box below, I usually put the links to the decks that I show. However, there's a couple of rules. If it's an out of print deck, I don't put the link to that, simply because I don't want to mislead people into thinking that it's still available. And there's also another problem. So in July, the beginning of July, I received an email from YouTube technical support or something like that, saying that for some reason that they're still working on, almost all of the descriptions in the videos that I posted in the month of May have corrupted links. It wasn't me, the links were working, but there was some problem in the upload, and so I didn't even realize that. A few of you actually pointed that out to me, that the links weren't working. That's why I reached out to the technical support. They did their check and it took them 3 weeks, if not longer, and then they got back to me saying that they don't know why this has happened. They're still working on it, and I haven't heard from them since. And what happens is that this is, especially when I'm traveling, it's not easy to copy paste the links. So until I'm sure 100% that this issue has been resolved, I'm probably not going to put all of the links to the decks that I'm showing. There's been someone, reaching out and asking, is it difficult to post a link? It's not difficult. It's just that it is difficult when it doesn't work, and it's not depending on me. So that is something that I've already mentioned, probably, as I said, 5 or 6 weeks ago at the beginning of July, when they actually contacted me to say what was happening. And I haven't heard. I will reach out to them. Maybe the problem has been solved and they just didn't tell me. So moving on, the last prompt for this video is Whispers Beneath the Oak, a deck that represents what timeless truth lie hidden in the shadows of the soul. And of course I had to go with the Blood Moon Tarot, because this is just one really beautiful description of what this deck actually is and does for me as a reader and as a collector. So we know that this deck, we know by now that it's coming out mass market. We don't necessarily know when, or actually, sorry, I am not entirely sure that it's coming out mass market. I do know it's going to be reprinted for sure. I forgot. I used to know this. I forgot. There is a video that I posted about all of the indie out-of-print decks that are coming out mass market. So you might want to check that video out. There's a few decks. I don't particularly remember whether, I know that it's going to be available again. I just don't know whether it's going to be indie again or mass market. I do believe that it's going to be picked up mass market. In any case, this is an incredibly beautiful deck. Very deep, very dreamy, like trance-like state of mind, where you approach the status of dream, but you're still awake. So there's the consciousness is just going in and out. It is so beautiful. It does have all of the elements that I actually love in a deck. It does have that kind of darker vibes that I really appreciate. No matter the time of the year, the colors are absolutely fantastic. It is one of my most beautiful decks, I have to say. Really, really gorgeous. So this is, it had to be, you know, the pick that I chose for the Whispers Beneath the Oak. prompt because it's absolutely fantastic, and I love to end with the world card because it talks about completion. And so that was it for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. It really means a lot to me. It helps my channel grow, and if my channel is growing, I can post more content. So it is a win-win situation for everyone. But for now, have a great day.